Welcome back, and joining us to put the day's markets action into perspective is Jordan Toy from the Legacy Family Wealth. Thank you so much for your time, Jordan, and for actually joining us in studio. It's always a pleasant thing to have people in the studio. Let's actually talk about, because there's so much to chew on in terms of what's happened with markets this week, and also where they got kind of their direction from. For a while, we've been speaking about the Trump trade, especially after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. But then also things changed, where we did get Joe Biden saying that he is pulling out of the presidential race. Do we still have that Trump trade going on, or has it now been replaced by maybe what you would call the Kamala trade?
I don't know about the Kamala trade so much. But definitely you've seen that position, or a lot of those positions, I think, start to be unwound or downsized. And I think it also talks to the risk in trying to make trades or make investments or make investment calls based on what's happening in politics. I mean, I think we all know politicians and their policies don't always get implemented exactly as they market them to be. In this case, the Trump trade was specifically looking at the market has a view that Trump's policies naturally will, or the indication is that they're likely to be inflationary. And therefore, what trades can you potentially place off the back of that? Now, as you mentioned already, that's potentially changed a bit with the probability of a Democratic candidate potentially increasing in this upcoming election. But basically, yes, it's trades based on the expected inflationary impact of some of Trump's policies. So we know, for example, that he wants to increase tariffs. We also know he wants to cut taxes. But there's no talk of decreasing government expenditure. So when you combine these things, a lot of those factors can lead to additional inflationary pressures in the market. And it's trades based on that. So taking short positions or selling the long end of the US Treasury curve, so 10-year bonds and things like that. We know Trump likes the oil and gas or energy sector, so potentially trades around that. In his last term, he removed some regulation in the financial sector. So there's a number of different ways you can express that Trump trade, and it's become a term recently. But I do think it shows you the risk in placing trades based on politics, which can change from day to day. And exactly that happened with the assassination attempt.
And of course, a Trump leadership, I would imagine, would also impact geopolitics when it comes to China. And we know the link between China and the AI counters that have actually enjoyed quite a nice bull rally this year. Do you think that also maybe contributes to the kind of rotation that we have seen in the markets, the sector rotation from the tech sector, the mega caps, the AI stocks, to maybe the more domestic counters in the markets?
I think definitely there's geopolitics at play. We all know from the previous presidency that Trump was, the trade wars was a big topic at the time. And I think there is a bit of nervousness in markets around what he's talked about, quite big tariffs, and the US and under Biden has already implemented tariffs on specifically Chinese vehicle manufacturers. So I think there's definitely a train of thought that you need to follow there. But broadly speaking, we mentioned the Chinese motor industry. I think the rest of the world has sort of woken up and taken notice of it. Tariffs is one aspect, but you can see increasingly US manufacturers are not doing well in China. European manufacturers the same. I mean, just overnight now, the US vehicle manufacturers from Ford.
So it's not just Tesla, because of course we did see disappointing results from Tesla, but it's across the board.
100%. And I think more so to that, the Chinese are looking to also expand into other countries. So in an effort to try and reduce the impact of those tariffs, they're saying to the European Union, well, we'll set up some factories there. So I think the auto sector is very much taking notice of it. And you could see it. I mean, Ford overnight, I think, is down 18-20%. So not just on the back of that, there's other factors at play, but increasing pressure in that space.
But listen, with all of that, the U.S. economy is doing quite well. It did surprise to the upside in the second quarter. Is there any direction that that it could have an impact on in terms of where the Fed could go, considering how strong the economy still is there? Is there nervousness that maybe the Fed will think that, the economy is still very strong, so we can kind of hold off on interest rates? Or is it a case of, the economy is strong, inflation is coming down, maybe we can start cutting rates?
So I think it's a very relevant question, especially I think the Fed is meeting next week to decide. I think it's probably, in my opinion, unlikely that they look at a rate cut this early. At the moment, the market, if we look at the probabilities around it, the market's pricing in a near certainty of a rate cut in September. I think it is likely. The growth surprise to the upside does sort of muddy the waters a bit. But I think Jerome Powell recently spoke, the Fed chair spoke, I believe it was in Congress a number of weeks ago, and he mentioned, and I think that was what led to a lot of this optimism around the September rate cut, is that they don't necessarily need inflation to hit 2% before they start cutting. Potentially that's too late by that stage. So I don't think this increased growth figure that's come out recently derails that sort of narrative, but definitely clouds the sort of, I think it's not 100% probability anymore in September. Maybe it's reduced that slightly.
All right. Well, let us get to your stock pick for today, Jordan. What are you hanging your hat on today?
So maybe a bit of a controversial one considering the news last week, but I'd like to talk about CrowdStrike.
Okay.
So obviously a major...
Brave?
Yeah, brave stock pick. So I think obviously a major outage over the last week.
Yeah.
I think incorrectly, I think a lot of people assumed it was to do with Microsoft. Obviously Microsoft Windows was affected, but it came from an update that CrowdStrike released. I think that's the first important point to note. It wasn't a cybersecurity breach because it's a cybersecurity company that would obviously be extremely damaging to the company's prospects.
Okay.
But I think just the sector in general, going forward, I mean, I think Sibanye-Stillwater had an announcement out today about a cyber attack they suffered a week or two ago. And I think we're all aware that going forward, cyber attacks are becoming more prevalent and becoming bigger risks to businesses. So I think the sector as a whole is definitely a place that we look at quite closely. CrowdStrike within that sector, despite the events of last week, is still a market leader, one of the bigger, or the second largest by market cap. And yeah, I think they have good management. I do think this is an unfortunate error and one that cost the global economy quite significantly. So we are waiting to see if there are some lawsuits coming potentially from this outage, because obviously a lot of businesses lost a lot of revenue. Having said that, the stock has sold off just over 30% already. So there's an argument to look at that and go, well, if we still believe in it in the long term and its long-term prospects, does it present a potentially attractive entry point? Obviously, this is my views and my opinions, but I do think it is a sector and a company that we quite like, despite the events of last week, which are unfortunate.
Well, let me just say, I think you are the third person this week to actually pick a CrowdStrike as a stock pick. And I know that before, there had been a lot of optimism on CrowdStrike. So I think it's quite interesting to see how you guys have read the situation, that this might just be a short-term blip and really nothing serious, and that it's actually a buying opportunity. Yeah, so thank you so much.
I'm surprised so many of my colleagues have come in with that stock pick. But I think it presents an opportunity and one that's got to be investigated.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your insights today. Really appreciate it. That was Jordan Toy from the Legacy Family Wealth.